Mike Young here with MikeYoungCoach.com and BeyondYourWeddingDay.com. I'm going to talk to you today about expectations. By expectations, I mean expectations in a marriage. And what are some of those expectations that you come into, and how do you deal with those, and that type of thing. So, I think sometimes some questions can creep into your mind, but there's two things that kind of set up your expectations for marriage, I believe. That is, one, your dating experience with your spouse. How did that go? That's going to set up expectations. And also, the kind of marriage that you saw firsthand growing up is also going to affect what your expectations are for marriage. I think some questions that can creep into your mind maybe the first couple of years of your marriage are things like, are other people's marriages like this, or is just ours? Are we the only ones that struggle? Why isn't my wife the person I thought she was going to be? Or why isn't my husband the person I thought he was going to be? Or even worse, sometimes they're thinking, why isn't my wife more like my mom? Or why wasn't my husband more like my dad? And certainly voicing those concerns usually is not a good idea. Sometimes it can be more serious, and you start thinking, did I marry the right person even? And I think one of the more dangerous ones too is, you start thinking, how can I change my spouse? And that's really one I want to focus on, especially from a money standpoint. We don't want to, chances are you married someone who maybe is a budgeter and you're not. And you may be thinking, how can I get this person to not make me plan and spend down to the penny every dollar that we have? It drives me nuts. Or it could be the other way around. You might think, how can I get my spouse to start budgeting? They just freely spend whatever they want. I need to start doing this. And I think the important part to remember is you can't change your spouse. But what you can control is yourself. But what you can do is sit down together, talk about this stuff. And if you're into budgeting, you don't necessarily want to make your spouse a budgeter. You can do the actual numbers in the budget and then sit down with them and go through it and get their input. But you're not necessarily making them a budgeter that way. But they do need to have a say in the process. So again, if you kind of keep that in mind and understand where your expectations come from, and basically bottom line, know that when you made those vows, it was for better, for worse, and it was for a lifetime. Keep that in mind, and you'll have a happy, successful marriage.